Hello. Okay, Baghead. And do you know what? I think I would have had a better experience with this movie if I had a bag over my head while watching it. So yeah, Baghead, a supernatural horror possession movie where we follow an Iris Clarke, a young woman who inherits a rundown pub and discovers a dark secret within its basement. Baghead, a shape-shifting creature that will let you speak to lost loved ones, but not without consequences. So, I want to start off with saying that I really like the idea behind this story. I like the concept of this movie. It shares the same concept as Talk to Me, another possession movie that I was a big fan of from last year. If you want to check out my review of Talk to Me, I will leave a link below. But yeah, it's pretty much the same idea. It's got it's got the same sort of concept, but unfortunately, compared to Talk to Me, Baghead is far inferior. In fact, it just felt more of a rip-off version of that movie. Whereas Talk to Me had characters that you actually cared about, and a story that you could get emotionally invested in, and actual creepy moments that were really well executed, this film, Baghead, just lacks everything that made Talk to Me so special. Like I said, it has a very similar idea, but it's just the way in which this idea and this story and these characters' journeys are executed within the story of Baghead just really failed miserably. Like, I didn't care for any of the characters within this film. The performances were very wooden. The script, the writing is terrible. Like, there are moments, just due to the fact that the writing was so poor, it felt silly. In fact, the performances along with the writing, it made me feel like I was watching a soap opera. That's how it felt. That's how the quality of writing and the performances sort of really came across to me. Very sort of soap opera. Do you know what? Even perhaps the performances wouldn't have been so bad, maybe, if the writing was actually better. But even with the setup, like the setup for these characters and the setup for this story was just very messy. Like the way they introduce you to these characters and sort of the setup with this witch in the basement, it was just so messy and disjointed, and it failed to really kind of immerse me into the story. Baghead, for me, lacks focus on what it wants to do with its characters and their journeys. Like, it just ends up feeling very sort of aimless and just almost as if they're making the story up as they go along. That's how it kind of felt. Like, you've got our two main characters, Neil, who wants to see his wife for one last time, and then you've got Iris Clarke, who has this estranged relationship with her father, and there's just not enough sort of there for us to really sort of care about these characters and their journeys and what their motivations are, and they just end up sort of coming across very silly, especially when it comes to Neil's character and when he eventually ends up getting to talk to his wife, and you get a lot of these sort of revelations and twists and turns, and just along with the writing, it was very cringy and just very silly, and just like I said, when it comes to that writing, it was very soap opera, and it just didn't work for me. It just didn't have a focus. I couldn't get emotionally invested into these stories because the way in which these stories came to life just ended up feeling very disjointed and messy. This overall experience, like, I couldn't help but keep comparing it to Talk to Me because the concept, the idea is pretty much the same, and I really liked the idea behind this story and this movie, but unfortunately they just fail miserably at creating a journey for these characters that allows us to really get emotionally invested and actually care about these characters' journeys. And yes, this is a horror, but it's not scary, it's not creepy, there's no atmosphere within it. Actually, do you know what? I lie. There is a couple of seconds within this film. It's actually my only favourite moment within the movie, and it is only a few seconds. And it's this shot that kind of really focuses on this very dark opening within the wall and in the basement. And it's just the way in which this shot, it's a very simple setup, a very simple shot, and it just really sort of focuses in on this very dark opening in this wall and in this basement. And I love the setting. And I just love how it sort of focuses into this darkness, and you've got the sound design and the sound effects. And yeah, for a few brief moments, a few seconds, yeah, it gave me a slight chill. It gave me, it was a little bit creepy, but that was it. Like, this film is not scary. It has no atmosphere whatsoever. But in those few seconds, it does show, for me, I saw potential. Like, the potential is there. I mean, first of all, you've got the idea, the concept, which I really, really liked. And I just I really found myself wanting to like this movie. It's just the way in which it's crafted and brought together. It just never really does come together. And it just felt like a load of ideas sort of overcomplicated for no reason, with all these sort of, with these characters sort of drama going on and sort of revelations and all of that. And it just ends up being a load of nonsense. That's the only way I could describe it. Sort of a messy, disjointed load of nonsense. And when it comes to the CGI, now I hate the use of CGI in horror movies like this. I don't understand why they can't just use practical, because for me personally, it's a lot more effective when it comes to selling the horror. And there are moments within this movie where they just use CGI, and it's like, why? There's this one moment that really sort of took me back to The Mummy from 1999 in the way in which sort of they implemented the CGI in this one jump scare. And it's like, what's the point? Like, why? It doesn't work. It already haven't really created an atmosphere here, and then they just sort of shove CGI in our face that just ended up looking over the top and silly, which, come to think of it now, perhaps that's what it was they were attempting to do with this movie. Maybe it was actually sort of a parody, maybe. I don't know. The more I think about it, perhaps. But yeah, there's a lot of CGI used within this movie, and in a lot of these moments, due to the CGI being so poor, and just again, how these moments were executed with the CGI, just ended up looking really silly and just like, I mean, yeah. I do want to mention another positive, actually. There is a scene, and I think it's in the trailers, where you can see the witch climbing, sort of crawling across the ceiling. And I really like that moment. But again, it's just the build up to that moment and sort of how that moment ends up playing out was just so underwhelming. It lacked any punch. It wasn't really creepy. But again, I like the idea behind it. And that's the one thing that I can really sort of say that the only real thing that I really liked about this film was the idea. Unfortunately, those ideas really didn't come to life when it came to the movie itself and how the story was crafted. Actually, that same scene, that shot with the witch sort of crawling across the ceiling, we end up getting a scene that mimics or basically just copies a moment from Talk to Me in the way in which they use the camera. So the camera sort of follows sort of the person as they sort of go down to the ground. And again, it was almost like as if it was a nod to Talk to Me. But yeah, it sort of, in that moment, really highlighted how bad this movie was compared to another film that basically sort of does a similar sort of thing when it comes to its ideas. So yeah, Baghead for me was a big disappointment. It lacks an identity. Yes, it shares the same idea as Talk to Me, but it could have been its own special little thing. I really liked the setting with it being in this basement, and I like the history behind it as well. But it all goes back to me sort of really liking the ideas, but unfortunately those ideas and how they were brought to life just really did not work for me. And so yeah, it really lacks an identity. It lacks any compelling characters or story to these characters. It's just a little bit, you've got a little bit too much going on when it comes to these characters' journeys, to sort of, as a result, it loses focus on what it is that it's trying to or wanting to do with these characters' journeys. And it's a 1 hour and 30-minute movie, and it felt like 2.5 hours. Big disappointment. They are my thoughts on Baghead, and I will be giving Baghead a 2 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Baghead, but what did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments below, did you agree or disagree with anything I said? Let me know below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot. My next review will be for Argyle, Matthew Vaughan's latest. I'm a big fan of Matthew Vaughn as a director. I'm just really looking forward to checking it out. It looks fun from the trailers. It has pretty much a Kingsman vibe to it. I've never read the book on which it's based. But yeah, I'm always looking forward to a Matthew Vaughn movie. Like I said, I'm a big fan of his. I absolutely love X-Men First Class and the very first Kingsman movie I'm a big fan of. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be catching you guys soon.